The rain-slicked streets of Havenwood, Virginia, gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights. But Eli Carter's heart pounded louder than the storm. He stood frozen outside the diner, his breath fogging in the chilly autumn air, staring through the window at the boy who'd haunted his dreams for months. Jamie Ellis, with his quiet smile and eyes that held secrets, was wiping down the counter, oblivious to the chaos he'd sparked in Eli's world. Eli wasn't supposed to feel this way. At 22, he was the son of a Baptist preacher, raised on sermons about sin and salvation. Havenwood was a town where whispers carried weight, and being different wasn't just frowned upon, it was dangerous. Yet, every time Jamie glanced his way during their shared shifts at the diner, Eli's carefully built walls crumbled a little more. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Eli knew he couldn't keep running from the truth. He pushed open the diner's glass door, the bell jingling like a warning. Jamie looked up, his hazel eyes catching the light, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "You're late," Jamie teased, his voice soft but laced with something deeper, something that made Eli's pulse race. "I got caught in the rain," Eli muttered, shrugging off his soaked jacket. It was a lie. He'd been standing outside for 10 minutes, wrestling with the urge to turn back. Jamie tossed him a towel, their fingers brushing for a fleeting second. The contact sent a jolt through Eli, and he quickly looked away, focusing on the worn linoleum floor. "You okay?" Jamie asked, his tone gentle but probing. He always seemed to see right through Eli's defenses, and it terrified him as much as it thrilled him. "Yeah, just tired," Eli said, avoiding Jamie's gaze. He moved to the coffee machine, busying himself with meaningless tasks. The diner was nearly empty, save for old man Carterno relation to Eli sipping coffee in the corner. The quiet gave Eli too much space to think, to feel the pull of Jamie's presence like gravity. They'd worked together for 6 months, ever since Jamie moved to Havenwood from Richmond, chasing a fresh start after some unspoken trouble. Eli had been drawn to him from the first day. Jamie's easy laugh, the way he hummed while scrubbing dishes, the way his fingers lingered when passing a plate. But Eli had spent his life burying feelings like these, locking them away where they couldn't hurt him or anyone else. "Eli," Jamie said, breaking the silence. He was closer now, leaning against the counter, his apron smeared with grease. "You've been weird all week. What's going on?" Eli's throat tightened. He wanted to say it, to let the words spill out. "I can't stop thinking about you. I'm scared of what this means. I'm scared of who I am." But the weight of his father's voice, the town's judging eyes, kept him silent. "Nothing," he said instead, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just family stuff." Jamie didn't push, but his eyes lingered, searching. "You know you can talk to me, right?" he said, his voice so earnest it hurt. Eli nodded, unable to meet his gaze. The truth was a storm inside him, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep it contained. As the night wore on, they fell into their usual rhythm, taking orders, refilling coffee, sharing quiet jokes. But every glance, every accidental touch, felt like a spark in a powder keg. When Jamie's hand brushed Eli's while reaching for a mug, Eli flinched, his face burning. Jamie noticed, his expression shifting to something unreadable. Meet me out back after close, Jamie said suddenly, his voice low. We need to talk. Eli's heart stuttered. About what? Jamie hesitated. Then smiled a small, nervous thing. Just trust me. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Eli's mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. When the last customer left and they locked up, Eli followed Jamie to the alley behind the diner. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet pavement. Jamie leaned against the brick wall, his hands shoved in his pockets, his breath visible in the cold. I know you're scared, Jamie said, his voice steady but soft. I see it in you, Eli. The way you pull back when I get too close. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Eli's stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Jamie stepped closer, his eyes locked on Eli's. You do. And I'm done pretending I don't feel it too. The words hung between them, heavy and electric. Eli's chest ached with the weight of everything he'd never said, everything he'd been taught to hate about himself. He wanted to run, to hide, but Jamie's gaze held him in place, daring him to be brave. I can't, Eli whispered, his voice breaking. You don't understand what this would do. To me. To my family. To us. Jamie finished, his voice firm but kind. I know what it's like to hide, Eli. I ran from Richmond because I couldn't keep pretending. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore. The question is, are you? Eli's breath hitched. He wanted to say yes, to close the distance between them, to let himself feel what he'd denied for so long. But fear was a chain, and Havenwood's judgment was a weight he couldn't shake. He turned away, his hands trembling. I need time, he said, barely audible. Jamie didn't push. He just nodded, his expression a mix of hope and heartache. I'll wait, he said, but not forever. As Eli walked home through the quiet streets, Jamie's words echoed in his mind. The storm inside him was growing, and he knew it wouldn't stay buried much longer. Havenwood might try to silence him, but the whispers between his heart and Jamie's were getting louder. The next morning, Eli woke to the sound of his father's voice booming through the house, reciting scripture for Sunday's sermon. The words felt like a noose tightening around his neck. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Jamie's words from the alley replaying in his mind. I'm not running anymore. Eli had spent his life running from himself, from the truth, from the longing that burned in his chest every time Jamie smiled. But last night had shifted something inside him, like a crack in a dam. He couldn't stop thinking about the way Jamie's eyes had held his, steady and unafraid, offering a glimpse of a world where Eli didn't have to hide. He dragged himself out of bed and headed to the diner, his stomach knotted with nerves. Havenwood was waking up, its streets buzzing with the usual Saturday morning chatter farmers at the market, kids on bikes, church ladies planning the next bake sale. To them, Eli was just Pastor Carter's son, the quiet boy who kept his head down. They didn't see the war raging inside him. When he stepped into the diner, Jamie was already there, flipping pancakes on the griddle. He glanced up, and for a split second, their eyes met. Jamie's smile was hesitant, like he was testing the waters. Eli managed a nod, his heart pounding too hard to speak. The morning rush kept them busy, but the tension between them was palpable. Every time their paths crossed passing plates, refilling sugar jars, Eli felt the air crackle. He caught Jamie watching him, not with judgment, but with a quiet patience that made Eli's chest ache. At noon, the diner emptied out, leaving them alone with the hum of the jukebox. Jamie leaned against the counter, wiping his hands on his apron. "You didn't say much last night," he said, his tone careful. "You okay?" Eli swallowed, his throat dry. "I don't know," he admitted. "I want to be. But it's not simple." Jamie nodded, his expression softening. "I get it. Small towns. Big expectations. I grew up in one too. Before Richmond. You feel like everyone's watching, waiting for you to mess up." "Yeah," Eli said, surprised by how easily Jamie understood. "My dad, he'd lose it if he knew. The whole town would." Jamie stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They don't get to decide who you are, Eli. Only you do." The words hit like a punch. Eli wanted to believe them, but fear was a shadow he couldn't outrun. He thought of his father's sermons, the ones that called people like him an abomination. He thought of his mother's gentle but firm reminders to stay on the right path. And yet, standing here with Jamie, he felt more alive than he ever had in church. "Let's get out of here," Jamie said suddenly, his eyes bright with an idea. "After our shift. Just for a bit. Somewhere we can talk without the whole town breathing down our necks." Eli hesitated. The smart thing would be to say no, to keep his distance, to stay safe. But Jamie's hopeful smile was a lifeline, and Eli was tired of drowning. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. That afternoon, they drove out to Willow Lake, a secluded spot 20 minutes outside Havenwood. The water was still, reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. They sat on a fallen log, the silence between them comfortable but charged. Jamie pulled out his notebook, the one he always carried, and flipped it open to a page of sketches: trees, faces, abstract swirls. "You draw?" Eli asked, surprised. "Yeah," Jamie said, a little shy. "Helps me think. This one's new." He tilted the notebook, revealing a sketch of Eli's profile. His jaw tight, his eyes distant but soft. The details stole Eli's breath. "When did you?" Eli trailed off, his face warming. "Last week," Jamie admitted. "I couldn't get you out of my head." Eli's heart raced. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing the edge of the notebook. Jamie's hand met his, and this time, Eli didn't pull away. The touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment, the world felt right. But the moment shattered when Eli's phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Where are you? Need you at church tonight." Reality crashed back, cold and heavy. Eli stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. "I gotta go," he said, his voice tight. Jamie's face fell, but he nodded. "Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow." The drive back to Havenwood was quiet. Eli's mind a tangle of guilt and longing. He wanted to be brave, to be the person Jamie saw in that sketch. But the closer he got to town, the tighter the chains of expectation grew. By the time he walked into the church, his father's voice echoing through the pews, Eli felt like he was suffocating. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the image of Jamie's sketch. It wasn't just a drawing, it was proof that someone saw him. Really saw him. For the first time. And that terrified him as much as it set him free. Sunday morning in Havenwood was a ritual of pressed shirts and practiced smiles. But Eli felt like an imposter in his own skin. The church was packed, the air thick with hymns and the scent of polished wood. His father stood at the pulpit, his voice thundering about righteousness, while Eli sat in the front pew, his hands clenched in his lap, Jamie's sketch burning a hole in his memory. He hadn't seen Jamie since the lake, but every moment replayed in his mind the warmth of Jamie's hand, the quiet courage in his voice. Eli wanted to hold on to that feeling, but the weight of his father's words pressed down. Each sermon a reminder of the line he was dangerously close to crossing. After the service, Eli slipped out before the usual handshakes and small talk. He needed air, space, anything to quiet the noise in his head. He found himself at the diner, even though it was his day off. Jamie was there, restocking napkins, his movements easy and unhurried. When he saw Eli, his face lit up, but there was a question in his eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," Jamie said, half teasing. "Miss me already?" Eli managed a weak smile. "Just needed to get out." Jamie's expression softened. He gestured to a booth in the corner. "Sit. I'll get you some coffee." They sat across from each other, the diner quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Jamie slid a mug across the table, his fingers lingering on the handle. "You look like you're carrying the world," he said. "Want to share the load?" Eli stared into the coffee, the dark surface reflecting his tired eyes. "My dad's sermon today, it was about temptation. About resisting what's wrong." He swallowed hard. It's like he knows. Jamie's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "He doesn't know. He's just preaching what he's always preached. But you're not wrong, Eli. What you feel, it's not a sin." Eli's chest ached. He wanted to believe Jamie, but years of guilt were a heavy anchor. "You don't get it," he said, his voice low. If we, it's not just about me. It's my family. The town. They'll tear us apart." Jamie leaned forward, his eyes fierce. "Let them try. I've been through worse. And I'm still here." Eli looked at him, really looked, and saw the strength in Jamie's quiet defiance. He wanted to be that brave, but fear was a reflex, ingrained by years of hiding. "What happened in Richmond?" he asked, needing to understand. "Why'd you leave?" Jamie's gaze dropped to the table, his fingers tracing the edge of his mug. "I got outed," he said quietly. "My best friend thought he was my best friend, told everyone. My parents kicked me out. Lost my job. My place. I came here because I thought a small town might be a fresh start. But I was wrong about that." Eli's heart sank. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "Don't be," Jamie said, meeting his eyes again. "It taught me something. Hiding who you are, it's not living. It's surviving. And I'm done with that." The words hit Eli like a wave. He thought of his own life. The constant pretense. The lies he told himself to fit in. Jamie was offering him a way out, but the cost felt impossibly high. Before he could respond, the diner door swung open, and Sarah, Eli's older sister, walked in. She was all smiles, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. But her eyes narrowed when she saw Eli and Jamie together. "Eli, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone sharp with suspicion. "Just grabbing coffee," Eli said quickly, his heart racing. Sarah had always been protective, but lately, her watchfulness felt like surveillance. She glanced at Jamie, her smile tight. "Dad's looking for you. Said you left church early." "I'll be home soon," Eli said, avoiding her gaze. Sarah lingered, her eyes flicking between them. "Don't be long," she said, then turned and left, the bell above the door ringing in her wake. Jamie let out a breath. "She's intense." "She's my sister," Eli said, but there was no warmth in his voice. Sarah had always been his confidant, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she'd turn on him if she knew the truth. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the encounter settling between them. Jamie reached across the table, his hand resting near Eli's but not touching. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "Whatever happens, I'm here." Eli's throat tightened. He wanted to reach out, to take Jamie's hand, but fear held him back. Instead, he nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I know." As he left the diner, the autumn wind stung his face, but it couldn't drown out the warmth of Jamie's words. For the first time, Eli felt a flicker of hope. A dangerous, fragile thing, but real. He just wasn't sure if he was brave enough to hold on to it. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Eli went through the motions: church, work, family dinners, but Jamie was a constant presence in his thoughts, a melody he couldn't silence. Every glance at the diner, every shared laugh, felt like a step towards something inevitable and terrifying. One evening, as they closed up the diner, Jamie suggested another escape. "There's this old barn out by the Miller farm," he said, his eyes bright with mischief. "Nobody goes there. We could just hang out." Eli hesitated, but the pull of Jamie was stronger than his fear. "All right," he said, his voice betraying his nerves. The barn was a crumbling relic, its weathered beams bathed in moonlight. Inside, it smelled of hay and forgotten summers. Jamie spread a blanket on the floor, and they sat, sharing a thermos of coffee and stories of their lives before Havenwood. Jamie talked about his art, his dreams of opening a gallery someday. Eli listened, captivated by the passion in Jamie's voice, the way his hands moved as he spoke. "You ever think about leaving?" Eli asked, his voice quiet. "This town, I mean." Jamie leaned back, his shoulder brushing Eli's. "All the time. But I'd miss certain things." He turned, his eyes locking on Eli's. "Certain people." Eli's breath caught. The space between them felt alive, charged with possibility. Jamie's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. And this time, Eli didn't pull away. The world outside the barn faded. And for a moment, it was just them, two hearts beating in sync. But the moment was fleeting. Headlights swept across the barn, and Eli yanked his hand back, his heart pounding. "Someone's coming," he whispered, panic rising. Jamie grabbed his arm, pulling him behind a stack of hay bales. They crouched, breathless, as voices approached teenagers, probably looking for a place to drink. The danger passed, but the fear lingered in Eli's chest. "We can't do this," he said, his voice shaking. "Not here. Not like this." Jamie's face fell, but he nodded. "I know it's hard, but I'm not giving up on you." They left the barn separately, Eli's mind a storm of guilt and longing. He wanted Jamie, wanted the life he saw in those stolen moments. But Havenwood's shadow loomed large. At home, he found Sarah waiting up, her eyes sharp with questions he couldn't answer. "You've been acting strange," she said, her voice low. "What's going on?" "Eli." "Nothing." He lied, but her gaze told him she wasn't convinced. As he lay in bed that night, Eli felt the walls closing in. Jamie was a light in the darkness, but Havenwood was a storm waiting to break. And Eli wasn't sure he could weather it. The tension in Havenwood grew thicker as autumn deepened. Eli felt it everywhere at church, where his father's sermons seemed to target him directly. At home, where Sarah's watchful eyes followed his every move. At the diner, where Jamie's presence was both a comfort and a risk. He was caught between two worlds, and the strain was starting to show. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, Jamie convinced Eli to go for a drive. They ended up at a lookout point overlooking the town, the lights of Havenwood twinkling below like stars. The air was crisp, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves. "I used to come here when I needed to think," Jamie said, leaning against the hood of his car. "It's like the world makes more sense from up here." Eli nodded, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "I wish I could see it that way. Everything feels heavy." Jamie turned to him, his expression serious. "You don't have to carry it alone, Eli. I meant what I said. I'm here." Eli's chest tightened. He wanted to believe it, to let himself fall into the safety of Jamie's words. But the fear was still there, a constant shadow. "What if I'm not strong enough?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Jamie stepped closer, his hand resting on Eli's arm. "You are. You just don't know it yet." The touch was electric, and for the first time, Eli didn't flinch. He leaned into it, letting himself feel the warmth of Jamie's presence. They stood there, the world below them quiet. And for a moment, Eli felt free. But freedom was fleeting. The next day, Sarah confronted him at home, her voice sharp. "I saw you with Jamie last night," she said. "At the lookout." "What's going on?" "Eli." Eli's heart stopped. "We were just talking," he said, but his voice shook. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. I know you. Eli. You're hiding something." The accusation hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Eli wanted to tell her, to trust her, but the risk was too great. "I'm not," he said, turning away. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Whatever it is, you need to be careful. This town, it doesn't forgive." Her words echoed in Eli's mind as he went to work, where Jamie was waiting with a worried look. "You okay?" Jamie asked, sensing the shift in Eli's mood. Eli shook his head. "Sarah knows something. I don't know how much." But she's suspicious. Jamie's face hardened. We'll figure it out. Together. But Eli wasn't so sure. The walls were closing in, and the whispers between his heart and Jamie's were starting to feel like a shout he couldn't silence. The breaking point came faster than Eli expected. It was a Friday night. The diner packed with the usual crowd truckers. Families. Teenagers on dates. Eli and Jamie moved in sync, their rhythm honed by months of working together. But the tension between them was a live wire. Every glance felt like a risk. Every touch a confession. After closing, they lingered in the alley, the air thick with unspoken words. Jamie reached for Eli's hand, his touch tentative but sure. "I'm tired of hiding," he said, his voice low. "I want this. I want us." Eli's heart pounded. He wanted it too, more than anything. But the fear was a weight he couldn't shake. "I can't," he said, his voice breaking. "Not yet." Jamie's face fell. But before he could respond, a shadow moved at the end of the alley. Sarah stepped into the light, her expression a mix of shock and betrayal. "Eli," she said, her voice trembling. "What is this?" Eli froze, his mind racing. "Sarah, it's not. Don't." She cut him off, her eyes blazing. "I saw you. I saw both of you." Jamie stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't your business, Sarah." "It's my brother," she snapped. "And this town will destroy him if you don't stop." The words hit Eli like a slap. He wanted to defend Jamie, to defend himself. But the truth was too heavy. Sarah turned and walked away, leaving Eli trembling in her wake. "I'm sorry," Jamie said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Eli shook his head, tears burning his eyes. "It's not your fault. It's mine. I should have been stronger." Jamie reached for him, but Eli stepped back. "I need time," he said, his voice barely audible. He turned and walked away, the weight of Sarah's words crushing him. At home, Sarah was waiting. "You need to tell Dad," she said, her voice cold. "Or I will." Eli's world tilted. He wanted to beg her to understand, to see that what he felt for Jamie wasn't wrong. But the look in her eyes told him she was already gone. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "Don't do this." Sarah's expression softened, but only for a moment. "I'm trying to protect you, Eli. You don't know what this will do to us." That night, Eli didn't sleep. He lay awake, torn between the life he'd always known and the one he wanted with Jamie. The whispers in his heart were screaming now, and he knew he couldn't ignore them much longer. The next morning, Eli made a choice. He couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding. He found Jamie at the diner, his face pale with worry. "Sarah's going to tell my dad," Eli said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "I need to do it first." Jamie's eyes widened. "Are you sure? That's huge." Eli nodded. "I'm tired of being afraid. I want to be honest. With him. With myself." Jamie reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm with you. Whatever happens." The walk to the church felt like a march to the gallows. Eli's father was in his office, preparing for the evening service. When Eli stepped inside, his heart was in his throat. "Dad, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice trembling. Pastor Carter looked up, his expression stern. "What's this about?" "Eli." Eli took a deep breath, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I'm gay. And I care about someone. His name is Jamie." The silence that followed was deafening. His father's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. "You don't know what you're saying," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is a choice, Eli. A sin. You can fight it." Eli's chest ached, but he stood his ground. "It's not a choice. It's who I am." His father stood, his hands clenched. "You will not bring this shame into our family. You will not destroy everything we've built." The words cut deep, but Eli refused to back down. "I'm not ashamed," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm done hiding." His father turned away, his shoulders rigid. "Get out," he said. "Don't come back until you've fixed this." Eli left, his heart shattered but his resolve unbroken. He found Jamie waiting outside, his face full of worry. Without a word, Eli pulled him into a hug, clinging to the only thing that felt real. "I'm proud of you," Jamie whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Eli nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know what's next," he said, "but I know I want you in it." They stood there, holding each other, as the world around them seemed to fade. For the first time, Eli felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by something stronger hope. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, whispers had spread through Havenwood like wildfire. Eli's father had told the church elders, and the news reached every corner of the town. At the diner, customers stared, their murmurs sharp and cutting. Eli felt exposed, like a wound laid bare. But Jamie's presence was a shield. They faced the storm together. Jamie took Eli to his small apartment, a safe haven away from the town's judgment. They spent hours talking, planning, dreaming of a life beyond Havenwood's borders. "We could leave," Jamie said one night, his voice soft but sure. "Start over somewhere new. Somewhere we can be us." Eli looked at him, his heart full. "I want that," he said, "but I need to make things right here first." He went to see Sarah, hoping to salvage something of their bond. She was at home, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't want this," she said. "I thought I was protecting you." Eli took her hand, his voice gentle. "I know, but I need you to see me. Really see me." Sarah nodded, tears falling. "I'll try," she said. "I love you, Eli." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Eli and Jamie navigated the town's hostility with quiet strength. Some turned away, but others old man Carter. A few co-workers offered quiet support. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep going. One evening, as they sat by Willow Lake, Eli took Jamie's hand, his heart steady. "I was scared for so long," he said, "but you showed me what it means to be brave, to be true." Jamie smiled, his eyes shining. You were always brave. Eli, you just needed to see it. They kissed, the world falling away. And in that moment, Eli knew they'd be okay. Havenwood might never fully accept them, but they had each other. And that was enough. The whispers between their hearts had become a song. One of tension, tenderness, and true the song they'd sing together. No matter where the road took them.